Evan's the first thing I think of in the morning and the last thing I think of at night. And, I hope that he comes to my dreams at night. It's my only way to visit with him,
Back to Closer Look across the Village Media Network and wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We certainly hope that ours is one of them. But in any event, we thank you for your time tonight with Michael Friscolanti, our editor-in-chief, Derek Turner, executive producer of the program. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Okay, last night we briefly touched on it, and it's the topic of tonight's episode. Netflix coming out with a mini-series that looks eerily familiar to what happened to the Humboldt Broncos back in 2018.
Yeah, the Humboldt Broncos, I think everybody kind of remembers where they were when that news started to break, terrible April 2018 bus crash involving the junior hockey team from Saskatchewan. 16 people were killed, including 10 players. And I think so many things I remember about that terrible tragedy, one being the way the country reacted, putting hockey sticks outside their front doors for days, sort of a tribute to those players. But just how Canadian that story was, because hockey teams and sports teams in general spend their seasons going up and down rural highways all across Canada, and hockey in particular in the winter months, going to tournaments all over the country and rural back roads, main highways. I mean, hockey teams live on buses.
And I'll add this if I can, as parents of kids, involved with sports, at the high school level, the same thing, right? They're always hopping on a coach and going to a tournament somewhere. So it struck a chord with so many people.
Same thing. And then this story, sadly, like so many big tragedies, kind of played out over the next few years. We learned within days that the driver of the transport truck had actually blew a stop sign and gone right through at the absolute worst moment to actually meet head-on with this bus, causing this terrible crash. That driver pleaded guilty, was pleaded to 29 charges, sentenced to 8 years in prison, I believe. And then just the grieving process of all the families had to go through, and the way that, again, the country embraced them with so many. There's a beautiful memorial near the crash site, things like that. And the families, as you know, Scott, the thing is the years go on, and the families and the loved ones still have to live through this tragedy and try to make it, past it on the other side, and how you live life without the people that you lost. And now what's happened is Netflix this week kind of teased this series coming out.
Yes.
And there's nothing, we don't know a lot about it. There's no trailer, there's no title. We just know it's a group of the fictional series based on the fact that a group of young hockey players and their coach were killed in a bus crash. And it sounds like the wife of the coach takes on the team and coaches who's left from the team.
Right.
And obviously it's eerily familiar, sounds very similar to the tragedy. And some people have some strong opinions on it, obviously, including some of the loved ones who lost their family in that crash. We're going to speak to one of them tonight, Scott Thomas. His son, Evan, was a player on the Humboldt Broncos. And Scott, his face became well known to people following this terrible tragedy. Like I said, not just the memorials and the funerals, but the court case involving the driver. Scott's a very well-spoken guy and a very good person, and he's been kind enough to join us tonight for a conversation.
8 years ago, our entire country mourned alongside the small community of Humboldt, Saskatchewan. And so many of us will never forget the bus carrying the local junior hockey team, the Humboldt Broncos, was involved in a tragic crash that killed 16 people, 10 players, 2 coaches, the driver, 2 radio station employees, and the team's athletic trainer. This week, Netflix started teasing about a new fictional series that sounds eerily familiar, a team in a working-class town where hockey is everything until a bus crash kills a group of young players and their coach. The concept doesn't sit well with a lot of people, including those who lost loved ones in the Humboldt crash. One of those family members is joining us tonight on Closer Look, Scott Thomas. Scott, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to discuss this and for the opportunity to talk about my boy.
All right, Scott, we'll get into the Netflix series here in a minute, but I want to start with Evan, your son. He was a rookie right winger with the Broncos and a great all-around kid. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, I think he was in his rookie season with the Broncos, and of course he he played hockey growing up. He also played baseball. He was just one of those kids who could, he'd pick up a tennis racket, he'd be good at it. He had some natural athletic ability. And he always, gravitated toward team sports. He really loved being a teammate. And I think that was probably his best skill. He loved being a part of a team. And he had a great sense of humor, just cutting edge sarcastic. It was so full of sarcasm. And he was just a great student. One of those kids that, teammates would tell him they'd try and sit beside him in class so they could cheat off him. He'd show up and write an exam without much effort. So he was a good kid. That's really the best way I can describe him. And he was just getting his legs under him, trying to figure out life as an adult, and Humboldt happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, is there a memory that sticks out of him, whether it's with the Broncos or just do you have so many memories in your mind, just really help people understand even more the kind of kid he was?
Yeah, he one of the stories I've told publicly before, he had a little birthmark on his right cheek in kindergarten or grade 1 or something, and he comes running in the house in the bathroom and he's trying to lick this birthmark off. And I said, buddy, what's up? And he goes, well, the kids are bugging me about it. And I just said, son, you're not going to be able to change it. I said, that's got to be you. Like, that's who you are. It's part of your identity. And he looked at me and he never talked about it again. He was, just very grounded. I think he knew who he was. And I think of that story often. Just one look at me and it's like, okay, Dad, it's all good.
That's an amazing story. Thank you, Scott. In terms of that season, if I remember right, they were in the thick of the playoffs, the Broncos were, and I believe wasn't there a triple overtime game or something right before this accident? I mean, how were the playoffs going for your son? What was he telling you about it?
Yeah, he was a rookie, and they had a lot of 20-year-olds on that team, and he had played both games in NIP1. Both of those were overtime losses, just single overtime losses, and he played both games in NIP1. So they were shaking things up, and they came back to Humboldt, and he didn't dress in that triple overtime game. But, yeah, that was on the Wednesday night, I believe. They went to triple overtime, and the Broncos won that one. So I think they were down 2-1. Or no, they were down 3-1, I think. And, yeah, heading back to NIP1. But they were in the thick of it. They had a pretty good team, and they were having a good playoff run.
Absolutely.
Scott, I can't even begin to imagine what you and your family have gone through since the day of the crash and right up until today. How much comfort did it give you to see the entire country mourn alongside you and the other families, especially all those with hockey sticks outside of their front doors in honor of your son and the other kids?
A lot. Even, going through it at the time, it was so overwhelming. Just gifts would show up on our door from people that we'd never met before, notes from across the country. People would make quilts, drawings. People just wanted to do something. And so many people did give to that GoFundMe, but other people gave personal things. And, you go through something like that and you don't know what to do, but you want to do something. And so many people did. And, I said it as memorial service, the country wrapped us up in their arms and certainly gave us a lot of warmth, and they still continue to, I certainly see people from time to time and because I guess I was, fairly active in the media in the aftermath of it. People do recognize me and bring it up, and everybody remembers where they were. Mm-hmm. Everybody remembers exactly what was happening on that day. It's kind of like our generation's JFK assassination, if you will. Everybody remembers where they were, and just the ability to discuss it, to know that people still think about it. It means a lot to us, for sure.
Absolutely. I don't want to ask you about that day of the crash and what you remember, though you've had to think about that and talk about that enough, Scott. But I think what you said is right. I think what struck so many people about what happened and what made our hearts just sink so down was this was every kid in Canada. The buses are all over the country during the winter, up and down rural roads in every part of the country from coast to coast for hockey. And I think that's what struck people so much, I think, about this tragedy.
Absolutely. One of the biggest things, especially, in Canada, in the prairies and and I assume same down east. As soon as you get to a certain level of hockey, everything's on a bus, and you always assume it's a safe space. It's a huge vehicle, and I mean, what could possibly go wrong on a bus, right? And I know there's clearly been bus accidents before, the Swift Current Broncos one, and things like that. But in the hockey community, yeah, that's one of the things that struck, because most parents in Canada had hockey players as kids, and even beyond that, just the parent with the kid, just to feel that tragic loss. There's no words for it. I mean, you lose your wife, you're a widower. You lose your husband, you're a widow. But you lose a child, there's literally no word to describe it. And it's certainly, I know how hard it hit people.
Okay, Scott, we don't know a lot about this new Netflix series except a brief teaser that says a local hockey team must rebuild after a terrible tragedy, and it includes a photo of a young group of players inside of a locker room. How did you first hear about the show?
It would have been last Thursday or Friday. I got a text out of the blue while I was sitting at work from a reporter, and it said, "Scott, have you heard about this Netflix series that's creating a lot of chatter online?" And it's eerily similar to the Humboldt story. And so I Googled it, spent, throughout that morning, a fair amount of time trying to find out everything I could about it. And basically, it's limited to what we can find online. As I said in a couple other interviews, we've had no contact with anybody involved in that production. So, through a text, that's the first I heard of it.
And do you wish that someone would have consulted with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I said I don't feel we were owed that duty. It was a nationally televised story playing out in real time, and certainly there's lots of information out there. But yes, I would have preferred to be consulted. Just even this is coming. This is going to be a thing. I literally felt like I was punched in the stomach on Thursday morning when I started doing that research, and I had a little bit of optimism about how, okay, this could be good if it's a documentary story that's going to have some basis in reality. But it starts out based in reality, but from the sounds of it, again, as you said, we don't know much about it, but from the sounds of it, it takes a pretty drastic turn into fiction really quickly.
I think since this has hit the news, Netflix has come out with a statement saying that this is not based on real events. It's a fictional show. What do you say to that?
Yeah, of course they're going to say that. I don't know. There are just too many parallels. One of the things I saw online too, they're filming in Mission, BC, and they had some pictures of the set. And as in Humboldt, after the accident, every storefront's got, remember this, remember that. And there's a sign about South Dorothy, remember the 13. So again, I'm speculating, but I'm assuming 13 kids lose their lives here and 16 in our bus crash, and the coach dies in that too. And I don't know. I think that's a stretch. I really do. I don't see how they can deny that it's not based in reality. And from my understanding, there's some Canadians that are involved in the production of this too. So I could understand if this was an entirely American or foreign crew, and maybe they didn't know about it. But come on.
Yeah. Scott, have you tried to reach out to anybody involved with the production? And if you could talk to them, what would you say to them?
I haven't tried. No, to be honest, I wouldn't really know where to start with that. But I would just say, I understand there's a story here. There definitely is. I don't think it's one of triumph. I think it's one of perseverance and determination. Certainly there's lots of stories of perseverance that come out of this, but it's certainly not one of triumph. And my fear is that somebody who doesn't know that much about the accident, or somebody that does know about it and a little bit about it, watches this and draws the parallels and says, "Oh, everything's okay. All these Broncos families, they're okay. Like, they're winning championships again." I mean, no, that's not reality at all. And for those guys to fictionalize our reality is disappointing to me. And I know they're going to deny it, but I think it's too similar.
Mm-hmm. What would you say, Scott, to those people out there who'll say something like, well, this happens all the time. Art imitates life. We see television shows and movies kind of take ideas from the headlines all the time. What would you say to those people?
Absolutely. The Alive, the soccer team that had turned to cannibalism, and, We Are Marshall and things like that. And I think in those instances too, there was a lot more time between those movies, and my understanding is they were pretty closely based on fact. Mm-hmm. This starts in fact, but it delves into fiction really quickly, and I would just say to them, and that's partly why I'm trying to speak about it, is this isn't real. This isn't reality. Please don't assume that everybody here that's involved in this is okay, mm-hmm. and that there's any triumph in this story, because there's not. There's no triumph here.
I can imagine for you and the other families, it's just trying to get by day to day.
That's it. Evan's the first thing I think of in the morning and the last thing I think of at night. And, I hope that he comes to my dreams at night. Mm-hmm. It's my only way to visit with him, and I have no problem with the story being told, but based in fact. There are good stories here. Mm-hmm. There are stories, about the paralyzed boys trying to find a new life. Caleb Dahlgren becoming an internationally renowned speaker. Tyler Smith doing good things for mental health. There are good stories, but don't fictionalize it as you have. Mm-hmm. That's just completely inaccurate.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the stories involved with this, Scott, one of the more powerful stories that I read at the time, as we all know, this was a tragic story of a transport truck that went through a stop sign at the worst possible moment and hit this bus. And the driver of the truck pleaded guilty to 29 different charges. And if I read correctly, you were actually the first person from the loved ones who lost someone that day to forgive him. And there was a pretty powerful meeting, if I read it correctly, where you got to speak to him and actually told him that you forgive him. Why did you do that, Scott?
Yeah, I was at the victim impact statements hearing in Melfort. And before that hearing, I publicly in the media said a few times how I would like the opportunity to meet him to discuss what happened that day. And his uncle or whatever came up and tapped me on the shoulder and said he would like to speak to you. And so we made it happen. And right from the start, I'm a pretty reasonable guy, and you analyze the accident and how this happened, and he didn't mean for that outcome. He didn't. It was such a tragic accident, and you could try to recreate that accident 1,000 times in real time. And, one of the guys takes their foot off the gas for a half a second or accelerates for a half a second, and they miss each other. Like, it's just so tragic that those two vehicles at that moment met like that. And I was at the very first meeting in Humboldt when he pled guilty, and he stood up and he owned it, and the look in his face. And he's a broken man. Mm-hmm. He's as torn up as anybody could be in that situation. And our family at the time, I know my daughter struggles with it. She can't quite find forgiveness yet, but for me, it's the easiest path forward to hang on to hatred and carry that energy around. It's too hard. Mm-hmm. The easiest path forward is through forgiveness, and now we can move forward and honor our son in a meaningful way, as opposed to wasting my energy being angry at a man who caused a terrible accident, which happened to include my son.
How much were you thinking of your son when you made that decision? Would he have been proud of you for forgiving the driver?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was a couple moments leading up to that meeting that gave me inspiration, that whether it was dreams or other things that were happening in our life that made me think Evan was pushing us that way. So certainly I do. One of the other stories I tell about Evan is there in, grade 4 or 5 and just starting out in spring hockey, which is AAA hockey. And Evan made this spring hockey team, and one of the other kids in his class didn't make it. So this little kid stole his team jacket and took off with it. And Evan was upset, and we found out who it was, and I said, you know what, Evan, you know what, don't judge this little guy too badly. He's going through a nasty divorce. His parents are splitting up. He's got all these issues. He's clearly just looking for attention. And I said, show the kid some empathy. He got his jacket back, and those two kids were best friends. They became best friends. So I really do think he was a very empathetic soul. He had a lot of compassion, and I think it's a path that he would have supported for sure.
Obviously, he got that from his parents. Scott, do you keep in touch with the driver? I know that there's still his legal situation is still going on. I think he's finished his prison sentence, and there's still some deportation proceedings to happen. Do you keep in touch with him?
No, I haven't since, and we never actually directly communicated after our meeting in Melfort there. We exchanged a few notes through lawyers while he was in jail. And actually, we did exchange a few emails with his wife a couple times while he was in jail. But not since he's been out, and certainly not since he's been going through the deportation process. But I definitely know where he's at in that process, and but I haven't communicated with him, though.
And I'm sorry to go down this road, but we are talking about it. Just so people understand, he was a permanent resident at the time he was convicted of this crime, so he would be eligible to be removed from the country. The Immigration and Refugee Board did order him deported. He's filed, I believe, a humanitarian and compassionate appeal, which could take some time. Do you think he should be allowed to stay, Scott? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, I've addressed that before publicly, and yes, I do. I don't think right from the start, when we initially applied, his lawyer asked us to write a letter of recommendation and to support him in his efforts to stay, and we did. And I don't think that it serves any purpose deporting him. As I said right from the start, he stepped up. He owned this. He's well employed now. They've taken his job. He'll never drive again, which that's significant, which is good. He should never drive a vehicle like that again. But I don't think deporting him serves any useful purpose. And really, the only reason he's being deported is because this was a mass casualty incident, and the sentences ran concurrently, and it added up to over, I think it was an 8-year threshold or something or a 6-year threshold or something that kicked in this deportation clause. So I don't think there's any value in him being deported.
For sure. I'm assuming that some people who lost loved ones that day have different opinions. How do you guys all move forward on that? I mean, is it okay that everyone has their different thoughts, I assume, for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the, there's just the size and the scope of the tragedy. 29 people on that bus immediately affected, 16 lost people. And none of us, pick an issue. There's people on both ends of every issue, and that's fine. The one thing that we've come to learn about grief is nobody deals with it the same. Nobody does. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. The way I'm dealing with it, I'm not saying that's the right way. The way others are dealing with it, I don't think they're trying to say that's the right way. It's just everybody goes down a unique path, and I absolutely respect everybody else's position, whatever it is that they hold, because they hold it with conviction. And if that's what's going to get you through this grieving process and allow you to continue to function in life, then hold that conviction. And just because we don't agree, that's not a big deal.
Scott, here we are almost 8 years later. Do you blame anyone or anything for what happened to Evan?
Well, of course, the immediate blame falls on Josh Gratzadu. He's the one who blew through the stop sign. And, as he said, I asked him when I met him, I said, what happened? And all he said was, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Beyond that, my immediate criticism or who I would blame would fall on the trucking industry, both in the training of the truck drivers and in the regulation of the truck drivers. The person that I hold the most contempt for was his employer. His employer sent him out there in a bad situation, in a position to fail, sent him to a part of the country he'd never been to. And this is just my opinion based on the research that I've done, but he got lost going there, couldn't back up the trailer to load up the load that day. As he pulled away from the yard, those guys in the yard said, that guy's going to hurt somebody. So he was lost. He was behind time. It's my feeling that his boss was probably in his ear telling him to hurry up because you're running late. You got to get this load back. And he blew through the stop sign. Mm-hmm. So who I would blame most in this situation is his employer. And beyond that, the trucking industry, absolutely.
Has anything good come out of that? Have there been some recommendations or changes to the way truck drivers are trained in this country based on this tragedy, Scott?
There has been some movement in the immediate aftermath. Saskatchewan developed this MELT program, which is a mandatory entry-level training, it's okay, but it's just entry-level. You can't teach somebody how to drive a semi in the flat roads of Saskatchewan and send them off to the mountains in BC or coming down the 401 in Toronto. I mean, it's two completely different places. So there was a little bit of movement, but still not enough. I'm still advocating. I spoke at the Professional Truck Trainers Association meeting in Calgary, and I'm advocating for a Red Seal program. There has to be a national standard for these guys. So it's one thing to get them entry-level training, but that's where the employer's got to take over and get these guys up to higher standards, much like electricians and plumbers. I mean, once you have that Red Seal, you know what you're getting. And that's where I think the trucking industry is still falling down. I know there's efforts to get there. And it's my understanding of the trucking industry. It's like whack-a-mole. You hit a problem here and something else pops up over there. And it's just, to get those guys all on the same page is incredibly difficult, but I know there is a movement towards that, and we're not there yet for sure.
Scott, before we let you go, I'd like to ask you, how do you honor your son today?
We're quite fortunate in Saskatoon. We've been given a 15U baseball tournament. Evan was a hell of a baseball player, and so Baseball Saskatoon's given us a tournament to run in July that's named Evan Thomas Memorial Baseball Tournament, and we run that every year. And then Saskatoon Minor Hockey has also given us the opportunity to run a 13U hockey tournament for young hockey players. Same thing, called the Evan Thomas Memorial Hockey Tournament. So we run those two events. Tell stories about Evan. There's pictures of him all over the place at both those events, and any funds that we do raise from those go to his trust, his Evan Thomas Memorial Trust, and there's 4 scholarships that are funded out of that. There's bursaries and 3 different in Saskatoon here, and a couple other communities. We give money to Stars Air Ambulance every year out of his trust, because Stars was very critical that day, saved some of the boys' lives. So we continue to be involved in our community in Evan's name and try and give back to it, and try and keep his name relevant with the next generation of kids that are coming up, and also keep this story relevant, because I don't want anybody to be forgotten.
All right, from Saskatoon tonight, there's Scott Thomas. Scott, Evan sounds like a wonderful kid, and it's clear where he got it from. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully you guys can dig out down east there and get back to regular programming, if you will.
We'll do our best. We have a bit of work to do, Scott.
Yeah, sounds good.
There aren't many times that I miss the old iteration of this program called Inside the Village, but this was one of them because we had commercial breaks.
Yeah,
and I could have used a break after.
Yeah, that was it was a very powerful conversation.
Yeah,
I've seen Scott interviewed many times. Mm-hmm. What happens is, I've been a journalist forever, and what happens too with these families like Scott's is they get thrust into the spotlight for no fault of their own.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, the whole country is watching what happened in this bus tragedy, and there are cameras and journalists all over these families, looking to tell the stories of these kids who've tragically passed away.
And this extended beyond our borders, right?
Yes.
This was worldwide.
It was a massive story at the time, and almost overwhelming, the grief that people were feeling. And I can only imagine the different stages of this that Scott and his family have gone through, dealing with Evan's loss. But just hearing him list off, you asked him how they keep their son's memory alive. To think that there's a summer baseball tournament, a winter hockey tournament, and I hope that those live on forever. And to think that his trust is giving back to some good causes like the Stars ambulances that helped
For sure.
that day is an amazing thing. And I will never forget that the way the country was feeling and the hockey sticks all over the place on people's front doors. And also this story taught us a lot about forgiveness and what it means to forgive. It's not an easy thing to do sometimes.
It is not. And if anyone exemplifies that, it is Scott Thomas from Saskatoon joining us tonight. For Derek Turner, executive producer of Closer Look, and Michael Friscolanti, our editor-in-chief, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, right here on Closer Look.
Frisco and Scott's wardrobe provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.